Hey there gamers, welcome back to the Board Game Co channel, and this is a preview of Rocket Rescue. Hey there gamers, it's Professor Meg here, and welcome back to the Board Game Co channel. This is a preview of Rocket Rescue. This is a project that is currently on Kickstarter. As a reminder, this is all a prototype version, so all the components are subject to change and in their prototype phase, but thank you to Ghidorah Games for sponsoring this video. And also, this is a current Kickstarter, so you can check out the link down below to see the project itself and everything that they have planned. But with that, we are going to get into a preview to give you a general idea of how the game plays and go through a lot of the turn structure. In Rocket Rescue, you are playing as people on the Earth, and Earth is just no longer inhabitable. You cannot live there anymore, and your best bet is to take these rockets and rescue as many people as possible. So you are trying to take all of your crew members of your particular color, and you are trying to evacuate all of them as quickly as possible before time runs out and you are racing against your opponents. In Rocket Rescue, there will be 3 to 5 players, and they'll each have a unique player board. Here I have the Explorer and the Miner set up, and I will show you now that they do have these player screens. So this is so that you have your dice selection phase. You'll be doing that every round where you allocate different dice. You're not rolling them, you're using them to show the different values that you're willing to pay for different actions. But once you do that, you will then reveal all of your dice with everyone at the same time. So for the sake of the preview, because nothing should be a secret to you, you're not even playing, I'm going to put these aside, but just know that that's what you would be using in front of your character board to be choosing where your dice are placed. So with that, you'll see that all players will have their screen here, and they will be allocating their different dice on their boards. Now this is a bit mid-game where you can see that there is a lot of green, white, and orange on the board. And right here we are taking a look at the orange player, who is the miner. I have the orange player and the green player showing, the white player is off camera, but trust me, they do exist. Now you can see I have my crew members here, and depending on the length of the game, you'll have a certain number of crew members. You'll have 10, 12, or 14, and in this game we started with 12. You're trying to take these crew members, build different parts for your rockets, which are split up into 4 different types, and then you are placing them there to then launch them onto different planets, which will save your people and score you victory points. Now, things that are important are not only evacuating your crew members, but being responsible for building those different parts of the ships. So you also have these tokens here that will show who is the one to build these different parts of the rockets, because that's something that you will gain rewards for when that scores. Alright, now I do think that in this game there are 5 phases, and I do feel this is very intuitive. The phases are all on your character board, and one flows into the other, that I feel that it is just done very well in this game. And you will start off with your planning phase. So in the planning phase, you will reveal module cards, which will be set out here for the market, and then you will place and set dice. So that's when you're allocating the different dice, again, for what you choose to spend, but it's not necessarily rolled. There's no rolling for this aspect of the game, but you will be choosing what dice to be used. Players also have 3 different resources in the game. There are these 3 cubes here, which are aluminum, carbon fibers, and titanium, but there's also a resource that is energy, and during this phase you are able to spend these energy tokens to bid for first player. There is a turn order here. You can see that green is currently the first player, and obviously this matters because you'll get to take actions first, and you'll break ties when your die match for certain actions. We'll get to that in a second, but you can see that multiple people can be performing the same actions, and that can really matter who's ahead in the turn order because it also breaks your ties in those situations. After that, you will earn or spend energy, and this is very important because this is what determines the different sides that you're willing to bid for the different actions on your player board. So the rule is that you can always add or subtract by 12, and that will tell you how much energy that you'll be gaining. So for our Explorer here, you can see that they have a 2, a 2, a 4, and a 2, which would equal 10, meaning that they would gain 2 energy from the different actions that they're playing. They're playing a lot of 2s, which means that they won't be higher in the initiative order, and they won't be able to do as strong of actions, but they are gaining energy for future things. Now, the miner instead has chosen to use a 2, a 4, a 3, and a 5, which equals to 14, meaning that they would need to be able to spend 2 energy to be able to do all of these actions, but they are doing very high level actions because of that. Now that is the plan phase, and after that you'll move into all of the different phases that actually use your dice that you bid for, that you paid for in that first phase. And the first one would be the research phase. So during the research phase, this is when you'll be gaining these different module cards. These are the pieces of the rocket ship that you'll be building, and once you build them, they'll be face up over here where you can see that they're in color and look a whole lot more like a rocket. But at first you just see these blueprints, and these are what you're trying to gain. So as a rule, you can see that there are 2 advanced cards here because there are 3 players in this game, but if there were more dice allocated to this research side, which the Explorer did, you would reveal an additional card to be chosen from. It's basically, oops, sorry, that should not be flipped over, but it's basically there's always 1 less than the number of dice being used in this action, meaning that the last person may get stuck with a standard project if one isn't taken earlier. Now there are 4 different types to your rockets that you'll be building, and some of them you can only build 1 per rocket. For example, you have your cockpit, which is the very top of the rocket, and you can only have 1 of those. There's also the engines, which is the very bottom, and again, you can only have 1 of those. But you can have up to 6 cards available, meaning that the blue and purple cards, which are the fuel tank module and the crew module, you'll be able to have multiple of those within a rocket if you choose to build it like that. Now, keeping that in mind, the rockets can carry specific things. Only certain ones can carry crew. For example, this one, which is a crew module, can carry 4 crew. But this one, which is an engine module, which will go at the end of the rocket, can't carry any, which just makes sense because you can't sit in the engines. So it will show you how many crew can be put onto those different rockets and the other things that they'll cost, such as the energy to be launching them. The pieces of the rockets also have shields, and when they are launched to the different planets, that's when players will roll this die. That's really the only die rolling in the game, but you will roll a die for each piece that travels to the planet, and it may be damaged and destroyed depending on the die roll, and if not, the rocket can be used again to travel to other planets. One final thing to note about the research phase, as well as all phases going forward, is that the number used on those different actions also shows who would take the action first. For example, if the miner had put a higher number, such as a 4, they would take the research action before the explorer. But since they all use 2s, the green player would go before the orange player because they are first in turn order, and they would be able to take that turn ahead of him. Moving on from the research phase, after you gain these different cards here that you will be building for your rockets, you move on to the purchase phase. During the purchase phase, you'll be able to take resources from this market here, and you'll be able to purchase aluminum, carbon fibers, and titanium. Now, depending on the die that you used, again, both of these players used a 4, meaning that the explorer, again, will go before the miner, and they will be able to take 4 resources from these areas. Now, for an example here, say there was only this many carbon fibers left. If the explorer chose to take 4 from here, then if the miner wanted to take carbon fibers, they would only be able to take 2 and not 4. Now, at the end of the round, you are able to refill a completely empty area, so if there is nothing left in a certain resource area, you would completely refill, and other than that, anything that is less than 5 will refill up to that amount. During this, players can buy different resources from other players, so if the thing you want is just different from someone, that's great, but if the thing you wanted is no longer available or has enough to really be beneficial to you, you may choose to purchase from a different pile and then purchase the thing that you needed later, depending on the dice that you use. Another thing to keep in mind is that if you use 2 dice for this action, you are also able to choose from 2 different areas, or from the same one if you want that many resources of one type. Now after this is the boarding phase, which really matters what dice that you are using. When you are boarding, this is when you are taking your crew members here and you are placing them onto the different rockets to be launched to the planets. Now that is the entire point of the game. You're trying to get rid of all of your crew members, you're trying to save them and get them off of Earth and to a safe planet where they're able to live forever. So depending on the different die that you use for the board action, you'll be able to do different things. Now, as I said, you can only place so many crew members in certain areas of these rockets as well. So depending on where you are placing them, you have to be able to pay the energy cost and then place the crew members that you are able to place into those areas. If, for example, there is only one spot left in one of these areas, and two different players used the board action, whoever is first in turn order would be able to place theirs, and then the other player would not be able to place them because there is no valid place to place that crew member. If you do that, you can then move them up to this boarding terminal. You can only have one for every color, so a player can only have one person up in their boarding terminal, but with that you are able to then move them into the different areas on future turns. Now finally, the most important phase comes up, the phase that we have all been working toward, which is building and launching. This is when you'll be building your rockets, launching them to the planets, and scoring victory points for yourself in the future. So you can see that both of our players have chosen to take a build launch action, but they are very different. So for our explorer, they are choosing to build a card from their hand. They're going to be using one of these blueprints and paying the resource cost that is depicted on the back. So for example, if they wanted to play this one, they would have to have 3 aluminum and 1 titanium to be able to then play it onto a different rocket. Again, they wouldn't be drawing it from here. This is just for a visual example to show you. They would have already acquired this card during the research phase and had it in their hand either from this turn or from previous turns. Now there are other actions that let you take 2 build actions, but the other thing you'll be doing during this phase is launching the rockets. Now in order to launch the rockets, they have to have both an engine and a cockpit module, and you have to be able to pay the energy cost to go to the planet that you choose. So when you're playing, you'll have a choice of 3 blue planets and 2 red planets, and when doing so, these planets will have certain specifications. Some of them will need you to have certain things to be able to even go to that planet, such as a satellite. Now once you have those, you're able to do it, but some of them just require a certain number of fuel tank modules in the different rockets, and you'll need to be able to pay the energy to go to that planet. For example, we have here Aurora 2.0, and if you wanted to launch a rocket to this planet, it would need to have 2 of the fuel tank modules, and you would need to pay 9 energy to do so. Now, when this rocket launches, there are 2 very important things. One is going to be the person that launches it, and they'll get different rewards, and also the person that has constructed the most pieces of that rocket. For example, this rocket here, it's not quite done or ready to be launched because it doesn't have a engine module at the bottom, but if it were to launch right now, the orange player has the majority, and they would gain the construction reward as well. Once successful, you would then move the crew members over onto that planet. The planet would be moved, a new one would be drawn, so that that planet cannot be reused, but the rocket might be able to be reused. Again, as I mentioned, that's when you'll be rolling this d6 and see how much damage you do to it. For example, if their shield is a 3 and I rolled a 5, then it would be destroyed, but if I rolled a 1 or a 2, it would have been safe and able to survive the damage. Now this loop of actions is repeated round over round until one player has gotten all of their crew members safely somewhere else, onto the rockets, and then onto all different planets. When they do so, everyone else gets a final turn and the round will end. After that, players will score victory points for a couple things, so you don't have to be the one to land there first, and you might be able to win without getting all of your crew members off of Earth if they're stuck in rockets and things like that, because we'll go over final scoring now. During final scoring, you will get 2 victory points for each crew member on a planet, 1 victory point for each crew member in the hangar, so they are still worth something, and 2 victory points for each victory point token. Now those are going to be the ones that you're getting for the different planets, whether you constructed the most pieces but maybe weren't able to get all of your crew out, or you were able to launch the different rockets, but again, you may not have gotten all of your crew quite out there, and you were able to get ahead in victory points that way. Now one final thing that I didn't mention is, due to the constraints to be able to show this to you like this, you're not able to see the board the way it should be set up when you're playing the game. Usually you would have the different hangars here, which you can see Supernova Industries, Solaris X, and Project Hyperdrive. There are actually little card areas where there's 2 blue spots, 2 yellow spots, and 2 red spots, and that means that there are only 6 spots available for your different rockets. Depending on the player count, you will block some of these off, meaning that you only have so many areas to build these rockets where you will be working together, and people will be having access to all of your rockets, meaning that someone else could launch it, build onto it, or place their crew members onto it. So as a reminder, normally these rockets would be coming out from these different areas up above the board, but again, it's a bit off screen for you. Again, I highly recommend checking out their Kickstarter page to be able to see a bit more about how it was intended to be. Overall, in Rocket Rescue, players will be having fun with their different player screens, hiding what they're doing, hoping that their different actions they're selecting are unique and they're outbidding their friends, but still able to gain enough energy to be able to launch the different rockets and build the pieces that they need and get their crew members out to safety off of Earth before everyone else does. As a reminder, this has been a paid preview, and you can check out their Kickstarter link down below. Thank you to dangerour Games for sponsoring this preview. I've been Professor Meg, and I will see you all next time. Bye!